Maybe you've noticed you get kind of cold during a longer fast. Has that happened to you? Sometimes when people are doing a longer multi-day fast, they feel cold. And in this video, I'm going to explain why does that happen? Why do people feel cold when fasting? Is it normal? Are there any beneficial effects of getting colder? And my personal experience with it, and what to do about it. By the way, I'm Ben. I'm a PA, which is similar to a doctor, and I've spent a ton of time learning about nutrition and fasting and things like that. So I share tips and strategies to help you be healthier. So right now, as I'm recording this video, I'm actually on day 4 of an extended fast. So I haven't done one in quite a while, so I'm doing it right now, pre-Christmas, to kind of balance things out. I kind of needed it because I hadn't done it in a long time and gained a little bit of weight. But in any event, after, I guess it was probably the 3rd day, I started to feel really cold. And it was a funny coincidence that the temperature outside happened to drop quite a bit during that same time frame. So all of a sudden it was like 5 degrees colder inside, unless I turn on the heater, obviously. But anyway, I started to feel really cold, and that's why I'm wearing my hoodie right now. So I'm having that experience right now as I talk about this. So why do you get cold when you're fasting? Well, basically digestion is like a furnace. When you put food in your body, it's kind of like putting wood into your stove, if you have a stove that could run on wood, or coal into some kind of stove. So digestion is kind of like a furnace, because the very process of digesting food produces heat. And if you eat excess food, as when people overeat or whatever, some of that food just gets diverted into heat production. So some of the excess goes into heat production as a way of kind of getting rid of it and keeping you warm. And then any food that you digest produces heat, especially protein. I think protein produces more than the other types of macronutrients. So that's why you get cold when you're fasting, is because obviously you're not digesting any food. So you take away that furnace from your body, essentially. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that your metabolic rate is slower. It just means you're not digesting food. Your metabolism can still be active because, of course, you're using body fat and you're breaking that body fat down and you're turning some of it into ketones. Right now, for example, my ketone levels are sky high. Like, they're getting to the point where they're almost not measurable with the methods that I use, which are both the urine strips and the breath meters. So sky high ketones. And where do those ketones come from? Body fat. So that's what's basically getting turned into ketones. So I know that my body fat is getting used, and your metabolic rate doesn't necessarily slow down during a multi-day fast. In fact, Dr. Fung likes to share a study that showed that after up to 4 days, I think it was 4 days of fasting, that the metabolic rate was actually slightly higher in the people who were fasting. So anyway, for what it's worth. So if you don't eat, your body's not producing as much heat and you might feel cold. Now, is that a bad thing? Is it a bad thing that you feel cold when fasting? Well, I mean, it could be kind of uncomfortable, right? But there are a bunch of benefits of cold exposure, just in general. That's why people do cold plunges or ice baths or whatever. That's one of the reasons. So what are some of the benefits of cold exposure? Well, I watched an interview not too long ago. I think her name's Susanna Soberg. Anyway, her last name's Soberg, and she was interviewed by Dr. Huberman on his podcast. Talked a lot about the benefits of cold exposure. And one of the big ones is it activates brown fat, which is the like good type of fat in your body that produces heat. It's brown because it has more mitochondria. So that burns more fat, uses up more energy. So cold actually increases your metabolism. Also, cold exposure can reduce inflammation body-wide, increases dopamine levels in your brain, so you might be more motivated or feel better. Also, cold exposure can increase your insulin sensitivity. It probably does this in multiple ways, but one of the reasons is because it's increasing your metabolism and kind of causing that brown fat to get more active and stuff. And other benefits. The list actually goes on. So maybe the fact you get cold while fasting activates some of those same mechanisms. It would make sense that it would, because your body's going to be kind of trying to rewarm through some of the brown fat and other things. So what should you do about it if you're cold while fasting? Well, you could do a whole lot of nothing, but obviously if you're really uncomfortable, then, One thing you could do besides just the obvious things is you could use some training wheels, especially if you're a beginner. So if you use the training wheels, which are relatively small amounts of food or certain types of food that don't really disrupt your fasting, then you'll be digesting those training wheels and you'll produce some more heat. So that would make a difference. And the other thing is, if you can't handle it or if it gets really uncomfortable, obviously just stay warm. Put on a sweater, turn up your heater, use an extra blanket at night. So you don't have to do a ton, but those are some things that you can do. All right, so that's the scoop on cold and fasting. If you want to get a bunch of beginner tips about how to be successful with intermittent fasting, I've got a playlist right here that goes over those. And if you want to understand more about the benefits of fasting, I've got a playlist that talks about a lot about health transformations, people that improve their health, and various ways that fasting will improve your health, or it can improve the health and get rid of various diseases, and so on and so forth. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.